Hey everybody, Jeff here. So I wanted to talk to you about Tether Tools Air Direct, the wireless tethering device. First off, Tether Tools sent me this for review, but we have to return it. So it's on loan to test it out, see what we think. I had the opportunity to go down to Phoenix, Arizona to Tether Tools a while back to kind of get a first look at this particular device. And I must say that it doesn't seem to be too much different now that I have it in my hands and working with it than I experienced when I was down in Arizona. There are parts of it that I like, and there are parts of it that I don't like. I guess I like to think of it as kind of like hey, this is actually a really good first step. For those who just really don't like being tethered with a cable, it's probably a great little tool to use. Just depends on your particular workflow and how involved you are with your machine while you're shooting, or if you're really just like working more on set until you get to that final shot that you're happy with, and then you might need to work on the machine, things like that. So first off, let's talk about, just the initial impressions as it shows up. Nice box. Okay, we'll open it up. It tells me what's in the box, the features of this device. It gives me some options for compatible tethering programs. I'm already a Capture One Pro user, so that's what I'm going to use. And as I begin to unbox it, so there's the device itself. And the device itself is powered via one of these LPE6 Canon-style batteries. Does it take other brand batteries? As far as the sort of version 1 of the product, no, just the LPE6 battery, not any other type of battery, which is a bummer for Nikon or Sony shooters, but maybe they'll open that up in the future. It's got a cold shoe mount, so it sits on the top of the camera, like so, and tightens down. Now, if you were needing this spot for your triggering system, wireless triggering system, they include their own sort of custom cold shoe mount that allows you to then attach this to, say, an L bracket that you would have to have. So like Arca Swiss or one of these other manufacturers that makes some sort of L bracket, this would be sort of a standard one for that. That would allow you to mount this on the side. So that's a nice feature that included in the package. And take the battery out and connect the battery here. And it's also nice that they include a variety of little mini tethering cables. So this camera is USB 3, so I find that cable and I go ahead and get this thing connected. So I'm going to connect it via the Thunderbolt up here, USB-C, and down to the USB 3 port here. Camera is currently off. The way that this program works is it works through their proprietary Air Direct, their ADU, Air Direct utility software. So the first thing you have to do is go to tethertools.com/ADU, plug in your information. With the device, they send you a little sort of dummy serial code that you can punch in to register your email with them, essentially, and it's kind of like a little license code. And then you can download the Air Direct utility. And then from there, what it does, when you turn the device on here, turn it on, and I set it to ADU on the side here, where it says ADU. And I'm going to set mine to the 5 gigahertz. So it's actually broadcasting out a wireless signal. Works right on your wireless card on the computer. So you would go to your wireless network, and you would find the Air Direct network, and you would plug in that same password that came with the box. Came with the instructions, and then it connects. And from there, you go to your capture software of choice, and you turn your camera on, everything comes alive, and you can start cracking off shots. Caveat to this, when I was testing this, I was testing it on my new MacBook Pro, which has version 20 of Capture One on it, and I could not get the Tether Tools device, the Air Direct, to show up in Capture One Pro version 20, but I could get it to show up in Capture One Pro version 12, which is on this iMac that I have. So there's that. And I would hope that they would, send some sort of, firmware upgrade along the way. I actually went to the Tether Tools website to look for some sort of firmware upgrade for it, thinking maybe that was the issue. And I couldn't find that. So it might be just, how these companies kind of chase each other around in terms of compatibility, that Capture One version 20 came out and they you're probably still developing the ability for this device to work with it. It's working fine on Capture One Pro version 12. As far as Smart Shooter and the other programs, I don't have any of those programs to really test, so it's really just Capture One Pro that I was testing here. It's my preferred program. But all in all, as far as it working, I think it works just fine. The other questions you have to ask yourself is, well, how soon do you want this image to show up? So the idea being that if you're shooting just a RAW file, it's going to take about 6 to 7 seconds for that RAW file to appear, depending on the camera. If you're shooting with a 5D SR, it's going to take a little longer for all that information to come in. If you're shooting with a Rebel, it's probably not going to take as long. It's just the size of the information that's coming through. I tested on a 5D Mark IV, 6 to 7 seconds for that raw file to show up. All right, so that's not fast enough, let's say. The other option is to set up with your camera not only shooting in RAW, but shooting in some sort of smaller JPEG. That JPEG shows up within a second. It's like pretty instant, nearly as instant as shooting with a cable, really. You don't get the ability to make adjustments in the program to that JPEG the way you would want on a RAW. So I guess that's, just depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just looking for critical focus, or want to throw a crop on something, and you need images right away to do that, then JPEG's probably fine. But if you're shooting tabletop in the studio and you can wait 6 seconds for the image to appear because you want to be able to make some fine tweaks to it right then, you're working in a more slow environment, that might be the way to go. I could see as a photographer, that if I was looking to shoot a lot of rapid fire type imagery, fashion shoots, things like that, it could be problematic in terms of just keeping straight what I'm looking at. I would probably want to have a digital tech on hand to make sure that they're grabbing those JPEGs and separating them away from my RAWs, because I kind of wouldn't care about the JPEGs at that point. I'd need to figure out some way to set it up where I can stay organized with those Canon RAW files and not be worried so much about the JPEGs if I need to see those images populating quickly. So it's a little bit of a clunky system, I think, in terms of having like a JPEG and a RAW coming in. And then the other side of that coin is really like, well, then it takes too long to get that RAW file. Neither option is really super great. It's like you're either getting it really slow or you're getting twice as many shots, and half of those you don't need. They're just a small JPEG. It's really just there, I guess, to check critical focus. But, if you're standing there checking your critical focus, the other thing I noticed is that then the RAW would populate, and then you're like, oh, okay. I could see how that would be kind of jarring for a client to deal with, as images are coming in and then RAWs are also coming in and they don't know what they're looking at in any given moment. Mistakes could happen. So, all intents and purposes, I think it's actually a pretty awesome little device. Would I get one? For what I do, I don't really need that kind of wireless connectivity. I'm always within a cable's reach of my machine. I suppose it could be useful if I was doing a shot and I needed to, say, be up on a cherry picker and I didn't want to have to bring my tech rig up there too, or run repeaters and powered hubs down a long length of cable back down to the ground, but instead I could shoot wirelessly. Now that would be, I think, a useful area for something like this maybe a lot of people wouldn't even think of. But I could see that as being, because I've been in those scenarios where like, oh, we got photographer up on a cherry picker, and now we got tech down below, and now we got to run a long cable with powered hub in between to get that data to transfer. This wireless might be the thing to solve that problem. So here's where things get interesting. I wanted to test its range, just to see how far away can you be from your machine and still have this thing send that file. So with this thing set at the 5 gigahertz frequency, I went out to 10 feet, 6 seconds, raw file showed up, Canon 5D Mark IV. 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, and 60 feet away, I was still able to get, within 6 seconds, this file to transfer back to the machine into Capture One, the raw file. I even wanted to take a step further. At that point, I was actually down this long hallway in our building and at this back door to the building. And I thought, well, I'll go outside the building and see what we get. So I walked outside the building another 10 feet out to the 70-foot mark. But at this point, I had a metal door and a brick building between me and the computer. And at that point, all of the shots that I kept counting out to 90 feet down this alleyway, those did not come in. Most likely probably because of that metal door and brick wall and all that. But I thought that was pretty impressive. I mean, how often am I really ever going to be needing to be, 50 feet away from my capture station? I don't know. So, I think the range was pretty impressive, but, in terms of my previous example where I'm thinking about like, well, where would I probably use something like this if I'm up high on a cherry picker? I'm maybe 20 feet at most up in the sky for something like that. So this was plenty for that. And in interest of, seeing its basic functionality and how to get the thing to connect and get some shots populating into your software program, it's pretty simple. I thought it was, like a 3-step process. Not too bad. Some folks have asked, can it just transfer the JPEG and then transfer the RAW to card? And so far as my understanding is it doesn't save anything to the card on the camera. It's taking all the data right to the computer itself. So far as I know, that nothing's being saved to the card itself. Some folks have asked, can it work with 2 different devices? Could I be tethering to a computer and it also send to an iPad? Well, I think that would be more of a function like in Capture One Pro, there's Capture Pilot, which allows you to also have that image showing up on like an iPad. So that would probably be more of a function of the software more so than the device itself. A lot of people have written into our YouTube channel asking about various types of cameras. We at RMSP just have Canon systems available to us. It's kind of like the Coke Pepsi thing. You can't have both Nikon and Canon and Sony and all the brands all in the same building kind of thing. You got to stick to one. So we have been a Canon provider for a long time to our students. And so we don't really have the ability to test all these different camera brands. We just don't have all the cameras that are out there available. So I would say check with Tether Tools on the specific camera you have to see if that's compatible or not. Somebody else had asked at one point, can I use the internet on the computer while also connected to the AirDirect? Well, my understanding is that you're connected via Wi-Fi to the AirDirect. So you're sort of negating any other wireless connectivity to your own router in that situation. So I would imagine the answer to that would be no, because you're not connected to the internet, you're connected to the AirDirect at that point. Here's some things I think I'd like to see out of this device. Obviously 6 to 7 seconds really feels like kind of a long time to be waiting for your image to show up. So obviously, this is the first run of this product, and kind of reminds me of that scene in The Simpsons when the guy's showing the, fry later to Homer, and he's like, this thing will flash fry buffalo in less than 30 seconds. And Homer says, oh, but I want it now. I know we all want that, huge 50 megapixel photograph to show up right now. But this is wireless technology. That's a lot of data to just float through the air. And for a first run of a product, 7 seconds, I don't know, that's pretty good, all things considered, honestly. And with the idea that things will probably get faster as technology changes, and we've seen how fast technology changes over time. I mean, we're talking about hard drives that are like 4 terabytes in size. Things like that, just the technology moves so quickly. So I'm hopeful that that will be something that will happen. Other things I wish that could get with this would be obviously the workaround of like JPEG and RAW. To me is a little bothersome. I don't really need the JPEG, I just want the RAW. So any speed performance issues, any way they can increase the speed of transfer obviously will just be a great thing, because then I don't have to deal with that pesky JPEG being in the way and having to delete it out later and all that. It would be pretty interesting to see if Tether Tools and this technology can start to be employed in the same wireless technology that's built into the cameras themselves, rather than having a whole separate device. Maybe that's Tether Tools' hope, is that they'll buy this technology from them and start employing it directly into the camera itself. But that could be a nice way to start sending RAW files instead of JPEGs. Right now we can send a JPEG out of our camera pretty well to other devices, but in terms of sending a whole RAW file to a capture program, there's just so many different software companies and camera manufacturers in the mix now that, it's hard to say whether they're really going to be able to do anything like that. So my wrap up with it would be, it's a cool device. If you hate cables, if you just hate tethering with a cable, pick yourself up the AirDirect, wait the 6 to 7 seconds. No big deal. If you're shooting faster and you want images to populate in just because that'll make you feel better, then set yourself up with RAW and JPEG, and it'll send those JPEGs into your capture program. And that way somebody there can be, checking focus, making sure that, you're getting the composition, the lighting's not getting weird, things like that. The typical stuff that a digital tech would be paying attention to. As far as the price point, I think as far as an entry-level sort of wireless device, seems about right. I know that it hasn't been getting the best reviews out there in terms of how many stars it gets and whatnot. As sort of a first run with wireless technology like this, I think it's pretty cool. So that's all I got for you. You know, if you hate cables, pick yourself up an AirDirect. If you think 7 seconds is too long to wait, then continue cabling. Maybe wait for future versions of this device. That's kind of the end of the story, really. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you didn't, hit the thumbs down. You can comment down below if you'd like. Feel free to subscribe to our channel to get more content. You can hit that little bell to get notified. Thanks to Canon for providing some of the equipment for these videos. Thanks for watching.